So welcome back to Unfazed Under Fire. I'm David Craig Utz, the resilient leadership guy, your host and moderator for the show. Now, this show aims to support executives in strengthening their impact as leaders and their resilience so that they can thrive in today's highly uncertain, disruptive, and chaotic world that we live in. Now, this show is a stand for creating and bringing forward breakthroughs in how we develop leaders and organizational cultures with the goal of providing uplifting, rewarding work experiences for your employees, and while also igniting the best in them in service to the greater good and to create value through their contributions. Now, this desire for an evolution in leadership development is based on an emerging body of research that human beings have all the resourcefulness they need already within them to rise above and address the challenges we're facing today and to be able to do so with grace. Now, the first step to tapping into this inner resourcefulness, which is our birthright to claim, comes by recognizing that leading and living are inside out journeys. Now, this means that if an executive genuinely desires to have positive impact on the world around them, they must first realize what they need to do is bring out the best version of themselves, because that is the foundation for outer impact they desire to have on their organization and those they lead. And once they gain such self-mastery, it sets the stage for powerfully leading others, as I just said. And without this self-mastery, especially in the times we're in, leading at best is a confusing endeavor. Now, today we're joined by a special guest and a colleague, Vinay Kumar, and it is long overdue to have him on the show. So welcome, Vinay, to the show. We're glad to have you. Yeah. And preparing for this podcast, I realized that we have many intersections where we meet. The first example is that you and I were both on the campus of University of Maryland at the same time. I don't know if you realize that. Of course, I was in psychology undergrad and you were in chemical engineering. And I actually don't think chemical engineering and psychology buildings were that far apart. It was around the student union, wasn't it? Wasn't it close there?
Pretty darn close. In fact, yeah, it was very close to each other.
Yeah, but we probably passed each other and didn't realize, that we were going to run into each other again someday. But once you graduated from there, you spent the next 10 years in engineering positions at Gulf Oil and the EPA. And then you worked as a co-owner and partner at GRC Direct for 18 years, which provided graphic design, printing, and direct mailing services. And I was in the office products industry, which was kind of butted up against that a little bit, similar timing. But you served a myriad of organizations, and this is where it looks like your career kind of turned in a new direction, where you were tasked with training your external sales force and customer service representatives. And you also focused on marketing campaigns and strategies to acquire, retain customers. And you did a pretty good job, it seems like, over that 18 years, because your direct revenue grew by 28-fold. So that's pretty impressive. And after a couple of short-term roles, you found yourself at TECO Corporation. Am I pronouncing that right?
That's correct, TECO.
Right, yeah. And that really integrated your engineering, your training, and your coaching background, and you supported IT and engineering leaders and managers and high potentials to become more effective in their personal and professional lives, which must have been very rewarding. And during that time, you also co-wrote the book with Chalmers Brothers, The Language in Pursuit of Leadership Excellence, which I insist all my clients read. It's a must read for my clients. So it's great. I appreciate the effort you and Chalmers put into that. And you might know that I had Chalmers on the show this time last year about this time. So getting his writing partner in today. And also during that time at TECO, you became certified in a number of leadership assessments, including the Leadership Circle Profile. And I'm also part of that community, another intersection. And I see the Leadership Circle Profile as the bellwether of all leadership assessments in the market today. And as you're aware, I actually had the creator of it on my show earlier this year. So again, Vinay, you're bringing it all together today. You're integrating my show very well.
Good to be here. Good to be with you.
Yeah,
Thanks for having me.
Yeah. Now I think but there's more. Following your stint at TECO, you settled in to become a full-time executive coach, which you are now. In addition to having a robust executive coaching practice, you serve on the adjunct faculty of Georgetown Executive and Leadership Coaching Program, and also are on the faculty of Leadership Circle and are a key leader in that community right now. and we appreciate that work. And finally, you live in beautiful Northern Virginia with your wife, Sudha, and you're a father of two beautiful daughters. So that's a pretty full life. I hope I got all that right.
Fantastic. I couldn't have said it better, David. Thank you so much.
Is there anything else you'd like to add?
It's very good to be in this conversation with you, David. As you know, I'm passionate about this work and supporting leaders. And just, you and I go back so many years, and good to see the intersections. And for me, just a privilege and a joy to be in this conversation with you. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, it's great. Well, as I do with most of my first-time guests, I'd like to have you talk a little bit of your journey in your own words. I mean, I just did a linear version of that, but I'd like to know how a chemical engineer has morphed into a seasoned executive coach at the forefront of leadership development, and what most passionate about that? What you're most passionate about? So you tell me a little bit about how along that journey, what happened within you that led you to this point, and then what are you most passionate about in your work today?
That's a great question, David. So as you know, I have a technical background, went through life and had a great career. This is 2008 when I left the business. I was thinking, I left because, the business was a lot of joy for me. I enjoyed it, and I was, if I can say, I was good at it. But there were some challenges with any business relationships or partnerships. We had a good run, but there were some challenges, and I think I had some growing up to do as well. So I left the business, and I was thinking I'll figure out what's next for me pretty easily. Well, I could get things intellectually, but I wasn't able to move forward. There was something else calling me, and I had this epiphany, this thought in my head that why am I not able to move forward at this point? And I realized I keep trying to change things out there. And perhaps it's time for me to turn inwards. Something in here has to change. So that's when I went on my inner journey. And also, just many of my clients who knew me, they said, Vinay, have you ever thought about coaching? I'm like, what is that? I didn't know what it was. But it was their urging and their suggestions I began to explore. And I said, this is what I've been doing all my life. I didn't know there's such a thing as coaching. And it took me on my path both to inner development and to supporting others, right? So that's how I got into this path here.
Yeah, and I might have missed this. When did that inner spark happen? What, at the point of the career that I spoke about? At what point was that?
This was around, I left in 2008, I think probably around 2009. I was, as we talk about, we go through transitions. We use a metaphor, dark lake or in the woods. I was in that state, quite feeling lost at that point in time. And that's when I had this realization of something is amiss. I need to go within and look at myself and see how I'm showing up and what needs to change. That's when my inner journey began. And the awakening, we can call it, the inner development. And that was my turning point, David, at that point in time.
Yeah. And is that before you met Chalmers and the leadership? That was well before the leadership circle and Chalmers, or was that around the same time? Or
I think that the insight, that awareness began to happen well before that. And then, as they say, the teachers appear when the student is ready.
That's true.
It's Chalmers showed up, Bob Anderson showed up, his book, and Bill Adams, and all that work began to show up. And that work really began to speak to me. I read Covey's book again, and all that stuff made sense in a way that it would not have made sense earlier to me. It really began to speak to me at that point, David.
Well, and it's kind of like, I think all of us that support executives on this same journey, and I can really relate to, there's a couple of times in my journey when I felt kind of lost. But I mean, and I have a friend, that I just had on the show last time, Dan Blackburn, who wrote a book, Lost and Found, and he said, you get lost so you can find what you really need to find, right? That's a lot of what it's all about. It's that at the time it doesn't feel good. It doesn't necessarily. It's confusing time and challenging time, but it doesn't last forever. And as you say, usually, if you're earnestly seeking that, you will find what you need to find to take you to the next step. That's the amazing thing about life, right?
Yeah. We're resilient, and I think those are course corrections. I look at them in hindsight. I don't know if I wish to go through that again, but looking back, that was the best.
Yeah. We're happy. We're happy those times are over, and we've reaped the benefits from them. We don't necessarily have to live them over again.
Exactly. Yeah.
And I'd like to start with the book you wrote with Chalmers. I'd love, first of all, I'd like to know how you met Chalmers, how you two met, and then what was the impetus in those conversations that sparked co-creating that book together.
Mm. Yeah. So when I
Because
was
this is what a lot of my clients listen to these. So, and I always preach the gospel. They got to read that book, and we use it. So I hope that's also a background for this too.
great question. So when I was in my Georgetown coaching program, one of the books we were using is called Language in the Pursuit of no, Language in the Pursuit of Happiness. And I'm reading this book, and Chalmers is talking about this line really struck with me. It said, event does not equal explanation. I'm like, what is he talking about? Because as my engineer mind would say, we look at things from different perspectives. Like if you look at a square or a round, it looks different. But the idea that we make different meaning, I had not gotten that before. And I realized, wow, if the action we take is not a function of what's happening out there. It's a function of the stories I make up, the meaning I make. And I realized when I look at my life in the back, things that worked, and there were times things didn't work. And when it wasn't working, it was not the situation, it was the meaning I was making of it, the interpretation, and I didn't know that. I was acting from the interpretation, not looking at the interpretation. And that was
Yes.
awakening for me. That was a big awakening, saying, oh my God, what is happening out there? I have a view, I have a perspective, I have a meaning, and I can author different meanings, and different meanings enable different actions and different outcomes. That was like a revelation. So
Yeah.
for me, the practice has been whenever I'm triggered, and particularly slow down, look at what's happening and think, how else can I look at the situation? And that's
Right.
been the game changer. And that was my awakening. And I said to Chalmers, I reached out to him, I said, Chalmers, tell me how I apply this in my life. I get so much deep content. And then we started creating SOAR program together. We connected, he visited me, we created a program, and as they say, the rest is history. Then we said, let's
Right.
write another book, follow-on book with more content, framing the leadership in a business context. That's how it all unfolded, David. And
Yeah, it's a beautiful piece of work, a really important piece of work. Yeah, it's so funny because I think, there's a neuroscientist, Martina, I know I'm not sure remembering her name.
mhm.
But her quote is, and I'll make sure that the person's name is below on this podcast, but she talked about how human beings don't have the brain, the size of a brain to actually see reality as it is. That we need a skyscraper in our head to actually see reality as it is. So we've been given an interpretive brain that allows us to sense it. But and of course, as you're pointing to, the upside of that is we can move around, get things done, engage in relationships pretty effectively. The downside is sometimes we believe what that interpretation is telling us, and that can have various side effects that aren't always the most positive, right? So, and this points to like what you were talking about in the book with Chalmers. It's so gold because it points to this, and the chapter on assessments is one of the favorite ones I talk to my clients about. And because as you point in the book and very clearly that only one of the leader's primary jobs is facilitating conversations around what matters most and generating commitments that advance what's most important, right? That's what we're here to do. In fact, I tell many of my leaders that that's what you're primarily paid for. Above a certain pay grade, you're paid to have conversations, and I'm sure you've said something similar to your clients. And you have to learn how to be masterful at them. Yet it's easier said than done, right? Right. So, in your mind, what makes it so challenging to have effective conversations? And I mean, part of it, what you may be intimated with the interpretation, and what do you think a leader has to keep their focus on to be increasingly masterful in having effective conversations?
Yeah. Conversations are so challenging, David. Sometimes I'm amazed how anything works. Now, what do I mean by that? I mean, what I alluded to is that we live in an interpretive world. So sound waves, we hear certain things, but we make interpretation, make meaning out of that. And sometimes it's powerful, sometimes it's unpowerful. And the thing is, we're not even aware of it. The interpretation has us, we don't have the interpretation, and we either respond or we react. I think it's lack of awareness. We're not aware that conversations create and generate all our outcomes, our relationships, our identities, our results, quantitative, qualitative. We're it's a lack of awareness, because if we're not aware of it, we have no choice. Then there's moods play into this. Moods, what mood am I in will determine and impact how I'm listening to something. Listening meaning my active interpretation. All those things I think are going on here, and the same words have different meaning for different people at different times. So there's so much room for interpretation, or rather, I should say, so much room for misinterpretation, that I'm amazed how anything works sometimes, right? So I think the notion of conversation to create and generate, and also we're not aware that words create and generate. Words are powerful. So becoming intentional about our word choices is critical, especially in leadership, because our words carry so much weight. What we say and
Yes.
how we say it. It is our toolbox. It is our toolkit. And leaders is our language in our conversations.
Yeah.
It's absolutely critical, and to become aware that this is the, we have the creative power at the tip of our tongues. It's quite an awakening. It's like, wow, this is powerful. I can use it more masterfully, more skillfully.
Yeah, and you just pointed to something. I think, one of the belief that leadership circle coaches and those that are trained in ontology of languages, I think, is the fundamental coaching school of them all, right? Is the ontology school. Is strongly aligned with increasing self-awareness as a core competency. At the most fundamental level, how do you define what self-awareness is? And is self-awareness something one develops or discovers? That's kind of, I thought it.
It's a good question. How do we define self-awareness? I guess what comes to mind for me at this point in time, if I think about this, is being aware of how my thinking, my feeling, my moods and emotions are influencing, or my interpretation are influencing my actions, and how those actions are creating outcomes. Am I aware of the stories my mind is making up? Am I aware of my mood and the mood I'm living in? Am I aware of, am I in a reactive state? Am I in a creative state? Because if I'm aware of what's going on within me, then I can be more purposeful and more intentional about offering more powerful interpretations, being more intentional about what I'm saying and what I'm creating. I think it's about, in our book, we call it the big I.
Yeah,
Us looking at ourselves, right? Me looking at the way I'm looking at things. If I'm conscious of it, now I'm a choice. Now, how do we
right.
develop it? I think it's a combination. I think one is reflection, being aware of what I'm doing, what I'm saying, what I'm thinking, and what it's creating. It's as I'm taking action in the world, one eye is out there, the other eye is on me. So I think it's
Right.
something to cultivate, reflection. Others, I think we get feedback from others around us, because we all have areas of brilliance. We have areas of blind spot, things that we can't see. So
That's for
people
sure.
around us can help us see those things.
Yeah. We're both married. We know we have, we're both married. We know we have blind spots, right?
I get plenty of feedback.
So, yeah, very good. Yeah, so and relationship is, all seriousness, it is through relationship that so much gets revealed when we care about the relationship. The question is, do I care more about the habit that I engage in having conversation, or do I care more about the relationship and being in relationship, which may mean I need to change a habit of communicating to make this relationship work better. And we have to determine, and I mean, as a leader of direct reports, you have to do the same thing. Because whether you look at Myers-Briggs or DISC or the Enneagram, there's different styles that are going to rub us the wrong way, our conditioning the wrong way, and we have to be attuned to that and recognize that and learn how to be curious. I mean, that's a key point, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah, and you had some other fundamental claims in that book that I wanted to just talk off of, because I spoke to Chalmers about this too. I'm curious about your response to it. Those claims are, you cannot change another human being, right? We're not hermits. We do things with and through others, right? So if I was, as I always say to my executives in jest, business would be easy without the people, wouldn't it? So, but we're not. That was a say. That's a glib way of saying that, right? You have to learn how to work with others and through others. If you do what you always did, you get what you always got. We always have a choice. You're always a choice. How you see things matters. Change is part of life. Get used to it. It's constant. So as you look back at those, I don't know if that was in the pursuit of happiness that were brought forward, or it was something you and Chalmers talked about. What had you, that showed up right at the beginning of the book.
Yeah, yeah.
So what about those 6 elements is so important to you? And what do you think, how are they relevant to being a senior executive?
Well, first of all, they're all interconnected, right? In my view, they're all interconnected. I can be aware of how I'm looking at things. I can be aware that change is constant. I can look at if I always do what I always do and I always get what I want, what I always got. And I can choose
Right.
at that point, the idea of choice, I can choose to change that. Now, if I try to change that, you talk about inner game runs the outer game, right? So I can choose to
Right.
take a look at myself, how I'm showing up, what am I doing, how am I contributing to that, and choose to change that. So if you look at leadership, right, leaders are taking action to create outcomes. But if you look at it, where are the actions coming from? They're coming from their way of being,
Yes.
their lived experiences, their beliefs, their values, the moods and emotions they're in, how they value it, how they interpret things that are happening out there. Do they see opportunities or do they see problems? Do they see
Yeah.
goodness? Do they see, what do they see? And based on that, they take action to create the outcomes. So leaders are charged with creating outcomes, qualitative and quantitative. And we realize we take action, but as leaders, we have to also take a look at us. How am I
Yeah.
looking at things? And if I'm not getting the result I want, can I look at it differently? So I can move forward and create what I want. So I think it applies to leaders, and I think we're all leaders in our lives. So to me, it's a
Absolutely.
human. This is
Yeah.
human.
Well, I mean, I think point back at my introduction about self-mastery, that's ultimately we have to learn, as Aristotle and Plato and all of them said, the most important thing is to get to know yourself. Why did they say that that's the most important thing? Because the treasure is inside us, and the recognition of both what we desire in life, what we want to create around us, but also the very things that may support or go against that. And we have to, if we don't understand that and we're on kind of the autopilot you were talking about before you hit the wall and went into that moment of questioning, I think life tends to smack us around until we get that point, right?
That's around and yeah, and you were talking about, we were talking about, we have joked about being married right now. Also, I heard this line: our children are experts in pointing out our limitations, right? So
Yeah.
we get at this, right? And now where was I going with this? End of the day, all we have any control over, David, is ourselves, our
Yes.
thoughts, our feelings, our emotions, our beliefs, all these things, our behaviors. That's all we control. And there's an old saying
Yeah.
that everything changes when we do. We're the common
Yes.
denominator in our lives, whether it's working or not working. So ultimately, it all begins with us, or each of us internally is where it all begins.
Yeah. That's so well said and so true. And I think, I have to admit, in my early days of doing this work and even in the process of my own development, whether it was spiritual development or personal development, I heard that a lot and I didn't really trust it. But as I did the work, I saw that is absolutely true.
Mm,
I feel more free and happy and content today than I ever did. Not that I don't still have work to do, but it's because of the internal work. It has nothing to do with what I've obtained on the outside. What happens on the outside is then drawn to me more robustly and abundantly, I find, as I'm clearing up the clutter inside, So that's so true. Now, just to take a little bit of a turn, Vinay, we're also witnessing some insane times. The pace of change, and at times the chaotic nature of events is unprecedented. It seems like every day something new is happening that is putting us back on our heels a little bit, or can if we pay attention in a certain way, right? We also seem to be facing what feels like a falling apart of some traditional values, and where in a certain way it almost even feels like our own government is failing to serve those who elected them, and more unelected people are making decisions in secret that affect us. All that kind of stuff is going on, and I'm not trying to get political. That's not my point. So you'll be relieved of that, I'm sure. But as an expert in leadership, how do we find those willing to stand up against what's happening and reunite us and reconnect to, I think the founder's vision of this country is still amazing. Liberty and justice for all is something I'd sign up for every day. And again, I'm not talking politics, but rather, if we look at the principles of leadership, let's just keep it there. The highest expression is servant leadership, right? Where are these leaders, and why do we believe? Why do you see them visible now, and if so, where are they? Where are you seeing that sense of servant leadership showing up? And maybe I have a blindness So, I mean, I have my answer to that question, and we can talk about it. But where do you see the servant leaderships, and give us some rays of hope that that's showing up?
Well, if I
If,
think about this, leaders all around us, David, I'm speaking one right now. On the screen, I see one right now. You see a need, you see a way of creating a better world. You took on this podcast, this show that you have created out of nothing, and here it is, it's manifested. You're giving your life energy to bring, to have these conversations, to create a possibility of a better future. So right here is a leader right here. David, I'm talking to you right now. You're talking to one right
oh, very kind. Thank you.
right? I mean, you're bringing something, you brought something into existence out of nothing. You manifested it to create a better world. You're creating ripples out here. I look at my neighbors, I look at my clients that are showing up every day trying to make better organizations, whether it's public sector or private sector. They show up every day, they do the work they need to do, they invest in their growth and development. I think about pebbles in a pond. Each of these are pebbles in a pond, they create ripples. And that ripples are going to travel outwards and have an impact. Now we can focus on those, or we can focus on that are maybe not so great leaders. Well, we're all evolving. We're on this human journey, and we're at different stages of
Yeah,
development, and we are where we are. Let's focus on the goodness, and let's keep really multiplying that. And over time, it's just going to get better and better. So I see leaders all
yeah,
around me, David. Yeah,
that's
everywhere.
great. I was hoping you'd say that.
Yeah.
So, I think that was a really beautiful answer. I mean, and first of all, what I hear you saying, it starts with each of us, and it goes back to I could only be responsible for my attitudes, my behaviors, my habits, the way I engage, how I learn how to work with my moods and emotions in a compassionate and thoughtful way. How I bring myself into a conversation, even if it's in the grocery store with somebody next to me that looks, I can give them a smile, whatever. But you're also pointing to what I believe, and I was hoping you'd say that, and I wasn't surprised you did, that I think a lot of, I look back at, I think we're in a time similar to, and if you look at, the book Fourth Turning, it talks about this, similar to the Revolutionary War, Civil War, World War II. We're in those times when the species is stirred up, the hornet's nest is stirred up for some reason. And in the past, we saw a lot of great leaders formed in in the Civil War, it was Grant, and people like that. In World War II, it was Patton and, of course, Eisenhower and those guys. I feel like this sense of the trail, and I share this with my listeners to spark this idea in them too, that a lot of our servant leaders are showing up in corporations and nonprofits and in the public sector, not necessarily at the leadership level, but within the workings of those departments in the organization. So I think that we do have great hope, and I think also a time like this is many people, I think, are facing that which you faced when you hit the wall, right? We're seeing the external world can't give us what we expected or needed, and we're just, a lot of times there's a lot of fear and disappointment about that. But, if you look at that as a microcosm in a time when what used to work isn't working anymore, and you realize I can't move the chairs around the Titanic enough. It doesn't seem to be working. I better look at myself. And I really hope that people are really taking this time and beginning to reflect on what they care about, what's in their hearts, because that can only turn out for the better. But as we're looking at these global challenges and these business disruptions that we're dealing with, and most organizations are experiencing a reshaping in the way that their organizations must attend to a conscious development of leadership and culture, right? What do you see are keys for organizations that are doing that right now? If you were to say some guiding principles that must be in place to create, a high functioning, high performing organization in today's environment, what would you say those would be off the top of your head or your heart?
I think if I just think about that for a moment, right? I think
Yeah, take your time.
each one must really get clear about what they care about, what's important, what contribution they want to make in their organizations, in their world, in their communities. That sets up a vision, a desired outcome of what impact we want to create. Based on that, once you have a destination in mind or impact in mind, is committing to our development, our growth. I believe that when people grow, organizations grow, and when organizations grow, they have bigger impacts. They can create more of an impact.
Yes.
So I think that's the connection that I see, David. And so I'm a big believer in growth. I think inner growth leads to outer growth. People growth leads to organization growth. And you mentioned business. I believe organization, business is forced for good. A lot of great is being done out there. But it's really getting clear about what matters to us, what impact we want to have, and taking a stand for that. Having a leadership circle, we talk about purposeful vision. What is that going to happen? And then really developing ourselves as individuals, as teams, as a collective group of people, and then taking a courageous action, taking the bold action, taking uncomfortable action when necessary to create what matters. So I think
Yeah.
development learning is ongoing and it's critical.
Yeah, I really, just to highlight what you just said, that inner growth equals outer growth. I even see sometimes old clients drifting back to the outer growth. So they're drifting back to focusing on what do we have to do to grow sales, what do we have to do this, and losing touch with that. It's so true. If you're supporting yourself and your direct reports to be the best version of themselves, and they understand what the vision is, and the vision is compelling and inspiring and meaningful, and you're taking care of people, because well-being is such a top topic right now that we have to be attending to, because people are being confronted with so much. We have to be sensitive to that within organizations. Not our responsibility, but it's something we need to be attentive to. But all that can be attended to through just being simply aware of what you care about and how can I create that in this conversation I'm having right now, the next conversation. Obviously, we'll step back and think of broader things we have to do as well. So it's not just micro but it is the value of being clear about what you care about, and being present is a very powerful formula, right? It's a very powerful formula. Yeah. And the other thing, I was just curious of your point of view, because you've been involved in the leadership development profession and now in a leadership position in a leadership circle. It feels, and I think actually I put this in the forum a few days ago, feels like we have, as a profession, have to dig a little deeper to meet the day. And I'm wondering, do you see a next step or an evolving step for our profession to deepen our capacity? Because because on one hand, you can't expedite the development process. Mm-hmm. On the other hand, an executive who's extremely busy, you can't also pull them out of their office and say you need to go off on your 2-week silent retreat. They have to do it in real time. And I feel like there needs to be some efficiency and more greater effectiveness. But I'm curious what you think about that, and if you think our profession is being called to a greater capacity or competence at this time.
What comes to mind as I listen to you, David, I think about development not as separate from business. Mm-hmm. I think development happens in the context of business. So if you think about business, that's the playing field. That's the field on which we do our work. So how can we engage in development while doing our work? What do I mean by that? For example, let's say you have a leader who's maybe required to be more public facing, more speaking, yet they're uncomfortable. They're discomfort in doing that. They have to lean into the discomfort and develop themselves to start doing things that are uncomfortable. As they do those things, they'll have a business impact. And in the process, they will also grow and develop. So right. I think they work, and I don't think they're two separate things. I think development and business go hand in hand, and they must go side by side. Not side by side, but rather together. So that's the difference. I think it's not separate. I think it's part of the journey. As we do our work, we also are developing so we can be more effective.
Yeah, very good. Well said. Well said. Yeah, I agree. I couldn't agree more. And it's really continually enrolling our clients into that understanding that is important. And the link can be pretty easily seen pretty quickly. I think when you're coaching somebody, they can do that. But
as if someone's going through development, we'll spend time. What are your aspirations? What are your goals and objectives? And then is your current way of being going to get you there? If it is, there's no reason to develop it, right? But if it's not going to get you there, then what you need to lean into and do and grow and learn and develop and stretch into that will get you to your desired outcome. Now development is happening in the context of business objectives, whatever they care about. So I think they're all together to me, David.
Yeah, and it's before the corporation existed, the same thing was true. People that were doing their own, that were conscious about greater development, were doing in the course of their life whatever they were doing. They were a cobbler, they were, they may have been, I don't know, mechanic, whatever. They were doing it that way as well. So that's just, it is the nature of living an integrated life, as you're pointing to. It's very important. And this is the next question of integration. So we're on this theme today of integration. I had a great fortune, as you know, of talking to Bob on this show, and I also talked to Chalmers on this show. And here's another intersection. And so let me ask you, and I think you've already intimated this in the conversation so far. How do you see the framework of ontology and leadership circle working together in your work? Because you've have a great respect for both of them, right? You great respect for the book that you wrote, as well as a great respect for Leadership Circle. So how do you see that the red book you wrote and the Leadership Circle profile integrating?
Yeah, well, first of all, Chalmers and Bob Anderson, both guys I love dearly. And I've learned so much from them.
Me too, myself as well.
Two of my favorite guys on the planet, so thank you for bringing them up. There's great synergy between the two, right? If you look at the red book, the language book, the ontology, it's around observer, action, results, right? Results are a function of the action we take, and actions are a function of the observer that we are, right? The way of being, how we interpret. So how does that connect to Leadership Circle? If you look at Leadership Circle, in the centermost of Leadership Circle is what we call identity. Identity, to me, is our way of being. It's our beliefs, our values, our lived experiences, our skills, our knowledge. Everything resides in there. From there flows outwards our leadership competencies, our behaviors that lead to effective leadership. So on top half is, creative competency, 18 of them that are tied to effective performance and, effective leadership and business performance. Bottom half is reactive tendencies. Those are also leadership behaviors. Overdone, they reduce effectiveness. So if you look at the leadership circle, it's also observer, action, results. Identity is observer. The outer circle and the inner circle, those are the leadership competency, the behaviors. As they do them, they create their impact, they create the results. So to me, they're very much together. And if I look at leadership circle through feedback, what we're getting is feedback on one's way of being, one's actions they're taking in the world, and also underneath the way of being and the actions, what are the beliefs that are driving those behaviors? So to me, leadership circle and ontology, there's such a strong synergy. And that's why those are my two big bodies of work that I lean on. They go hand in hand.
Yeah, they sure do. I mean, I think if you don't get, so many times when I've done a feedback session with a leadership circle profile with a client, it's been so impactful. In fact, I used other 360s before that, and I would have to be the interpretive body for most of that. Mm-hmm. But I have a lot of clients that I've done the 360, and I walk into the feedback session, and they will launch into what they see and what they do, and they already have ideas because it's so clear. It hits you like sometimes it hits you like a ton of bricks, right? That's what we have to be ready for as practitioners with that, because it does kind of get hit hard, but it helps you see the observer you are very quickly.
There is no
and from a point of view of leadership, yeah.
Yeah, there's no better 360 for leadership, developing the leadership circle profile and other instruments, leadership circle. To me, there was a time I started using assessments, David. I would give multiple reports. I didn't know what to do with it. When I came to leadership circle, I don't know, for me, it just really spoke to me, and it really helped me see my stuff as well. And I'm a big believer, as you know, leadership circle profile. It is the most powerful. But I also like about it doesn't say that if your profile looks like this is what it means. No profile can capture this completely of a human being. No. What it does, it opens up really deep, rich conversations, and that's where the work takes place. That's where the transformation is. It is my go-to. It is my number one. Yeah.
Well, again, I agree with the whole thing about the leadership assessments that are out there that measure competency, and I think that has had to be evolved from, because in a certain way, it was useful. It was insightful to the degree it was at that time. But I think you want to be helpful in the process of, first of all, it's a tender experience for anybody. I don't care how gruff you are or how tough you are. Looking at yourself like that in a very straightforward and direct way can be difficult. Anytime we look at ourselves, sometimes it is, especially when you're in a position of authority, right? But it is so valuable when and when you bring compassion to that process and help if it does hit them between the eyes, well, what do you really care about? What do you want to create? It's one of the most inspiring conversations you can have with anybody. And I never had any like that happen around other assessments, because the other assessments you can be very analytical. You can be very distant from. This one kind of comes right in your face and into your heart. And at the same time, it's so grounded, Bob's research and how grounded the assessment is and all the other competency models and the Enneagram and philosophy and psychology. That's, Bob is, like I always say, he's the only guy I've met that had a statistician's brain at a highest level and a heart of gold. He integrated those two somehow in his work, and you can see it.
And I mean, no disrespect to other assessment. That's not my intention. Because
no.
Great people. It just, for me, I found leadership circle to be the most powerful, most effective instrument in really leading to transformative conversations. That really look at both the outer game and the inner game. Nothing else for me has done that except leadership circle so far. So it's true. It's a matter of effectiveness, right? What is, for as a coach, what helps? And to me, it goes back to the conversation: how do you expedite things? And that's another thing that expedites clarity in the individual getting the feedback, which I love a lot too. Anything else that you would say that you love about the leadership circle that you feel is pertinent to our times and important for our times, or anything else you would say about that body of work that you find is most enriching and valuable to you and to the executives that you coach? I think, as we mentioned, it's leadership circle feedback and instruments connected directly to business performance, leadership effectiveness. We've done research on that, and there's a direct connection between leadership growth, leadership effectiveness, and business performance. There's a direct link there. It really helps leaders see both the inner game and the outer game. It helps them see where they have their foot on the gas and where unknowingly they may have their foot on the brakes. That's reducing effectiveness. Not that they're conscious of it, it's often unconscious. And when they can see it, they can say, well, let me take the foot off the brake. What happens is they go faster, they get more done at a lower energetic cost. So it works on both what's reducing effectiveness, what's increasing effectiveness. And then you can make some, what I call some shifts in how they think, how they behave, and how they act that really creates better outcomes. So to me, it looks at both the brakes and the gas as a metaphor. It looks at the inner game and the outer game, and looks at our beliefs. And when we make the shift on the inside, shift on the outside naturally happens. And I think leadership circle profile brings all that to light through the conversation.
I really like that. You can go faster, you can be more effective, you get more done, and with lower energy depletion. That is key, because those like clarity and energy are so important for an executive. And it helps you.
Not only depletion, David, but also when you move into creative, it's energy generating.
Yeah, energy generating. That's right. Exactly. Not just depleting, it's energy generating. That's good clarification there. Yeah. So as you look towards the future, if you take out your crystal ball, what do you see, as the key skills and competencies that you believe leaders are going to have to continue to develop to be most effective in navigating the complexities we're dealing with and will likely deal with in the future? We could say there's certain things that may not be sustainable out there that could be breakdowns ready to happen. We all feel that. I'm not trying to be a doomsdayer I'm not trying to instill fear, but there are breakdowns that you feel coming. So what do you think leaders have to, who are running organizations, to keep them going, to keep thriving? that are primary skills that they have to develop that you think are most important moving forward?
The quote that comes to mind for me, David, is that things are changing so darn rapidly. None of us is smart as all of us. We have to work together. We have to tap into the collective wisdom, collective experience. So to me, it's not just individual development, it's the collective development at the leadership levels. So as leadership teams, how we develop, how we become learners, how we collaborate, tap into each other's experiences, thinking, wisdom, perspectives. By doing that, be more collaborative, be more open, being more learning, ongoingly learning, I think we'll see more possibilities and more ways of addressing challenges. So if I look at leadership teams, the most effective leadership teams are where they're all in their developmental journey. They're all learning out loud, they're learning together. They're looking at the challenges, the opportunities through multiple lenses to see how you move forward. Some things work, some things don't, but to me, it's a power of the collective. So it's both individual and collective development, ongoing learning is absolutely critical, even more so today.
Yeah, I mean, we've got to stop looking, we have to start looking to how can we work together. And I think, you see that on executive teams when it's like, I know this is going to sound a little out there, but sometimes when I see a executive team starting to click, it's like the boys and girls are back in, earlier times when they were just trying to figure out how to create something together and have fun. Yeah. And there's some energy in the room that wasn't there before. And there might even be a couple conflicts that pop up, but they get through them. There's something that's holding them together in the conversation, respect and trust for each other. Obviously, they care about what they're up to, and they're not taking things so personally. They're recognizing, and when you get that together, there's nothing that can't be done, and nothing that can't be accomplished.
Yeah, and be willing to experiment, right? Because not everything's going to work out, but take some chances, take some risks, try different things. Some things are going to work, some things aren't going to work. But to me, life is a constant experimentation, and every time we do something, if it doesn't work, we learn from it. If it works, keep doing it. So I think more experimentation, more learning is ongoing. Who was it? Peter Senge said in the fifth discipline that the future organization will be learning organizations. So learning and developing is so critical. It's going to become more important, David, in my view.
Yeah, I just saw, actually, thinking about the reaching the impossible. I don't know if you saw the movie Naiad with Jodie Foster and sort of Annette Benes. Yes. I mean, the 64-year-old woman that finally swam from from Cuba to Miami to the Keys, and I look at that, and I was watching that movie. I was so inspired and saying, okay, my concerns are so small compared. I mean, she made it 75 miles and had to stop because she got stung by jellyfish or whatever, man of wars. Another time she just ran out of steam, and she did it 5 times it took her to get to her goal. And she did it at 64. And it just makes you realize that that's what's possible as human beings. And it wasn't just because of her. It was because of her team.
It was a team effort.
Her team that, a lot of times got kicked around by her a little bit. It was a pretty phenomenal reminder of everything the leadership circle is about and what we're trying to imbue the possibilities in people, that we have so much capability in us that remains silent for too long,
None of us do life alone. None of us do business alone. None of us lead alone. We all need each other, and together we can achieve so much more. And like the story of Naiad, that's a beautiful movie there. It's a true story, actually. Of
of course it is. Yeah.
What a clear goal that she had in mind. She was supported by brilliant individuals who supported her. And yes, there were setbacks along the way. There were, jellyfish bites and exhaustion, all those things. Yet she kept persevering. She kept learning. She kept experimenting, with and through others, and look what she accomplished.
Yeah,
So much is possible.
Yeah, it's great. Well, as we wrap up a little bit here, what is your hope for the future of leadership in the world and culture, the organizational culture or whatever, what do you see? What's your guiding light for why you do this work? Obviously, you're working with individual clients, and that's enough. That's great. You could have a really robust coaching practice, touch 20, 25 leaders a year. You do that enough, you're going to have an impact. But do you have any other guiding light that you are envisioning for what's possible moving forward that you'd like to share?
Are you referring to myself, or are you referring to the?
Yeah, yourself and what you see and what you hope for.
Yeah. For me, it's about what I think about at this point in my journey, David, is how do I scale impact? So I think that's one of the reasons I love being on faculty of George Washington and Leadership Circle in particular, is that in addition to George Washington, is that really developing other coaches, right? As they get into Leadership Circle and work with instruments, as they develop, then it's how we multiply impact. So Leadership Study Group, Leadership Circle Profile, being on faculty, developing other coaches to do this amazing work. And if I can play a small role in that, that's how we scale impact.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's kind of where my journey is. How do I develop others who can then go out and do the work and touch more lives? And as we do this, scale impact, I think, in this world here.
There's no doubt. And what I love about what you're saying is, it's about knowing what's important, and always life is like inviting you to do more. Not to do more for the sake of doing more, but if you have your passion, there's always new things that open up. The opportunity at Leadership Circle opened up for you. The opportunity at Georgetown opened up for you because of your passion and because of your engagement. And you stepped into that, and then you met people that you've had impact on. And it's the same thing for me. It's really a beautiful thing when one lets go and allow. And to me, it's also a paradox because I am life itself, and I'm not life, right? I'm not the boss. I mean, David is not the boss. Life is the boss, right? And if I can surrender to life, it maps out everything for me. And surrendering and letting go, surrendering, not giving up. Obviously, I'm not saying giving up, but surrendering to the opportunities that are given to me. If I take those opportunities, it tends to expand, and I don't have to think about 10 years down the road. It's just, what do I really care about now, and what do I want to expand around me? Yeah. Well, as we wrap up, do you have any final words that you want to share with my audience? Anything you want to just say to feel complete for today?
What can I say here? Just keep really investing in yourselves, keep investing in your growth, have a clear vision of what impact you want to have, and just best wishes. And just really glad you're here. We're all doing this together, and together we can accomplish so much more. So just have a great respect for leaders. I think leadership is a demanding role, and just keep showing up every day, do what you do, and keep learning, and bring the best of yourself. Good things happen for them. Good things happen for the organizations and the impact. I'm not sure what more to say at this point, David, but just
beautiful
in this conversation.
Yeah, I very much enjoyed it too, Vinay, and thank you very much for coming and joining me today. And I want to thank everybody out there that has been listening to the podcast and attending and showing back up to Unfazed Under Fire. The only way people get to know about this beyond my social media shares is for you in the audience to share these rich conversations with other people in your network. And what we're trying to do is spark inspiration and possibility, as hopefully you saw we did in the show today. So please get these out to the people that you know. The links, it's available on Apple Podcasts and many other podcast stations. And I want to thank you again for taking your time out of the day to listen to the show. I wish you Godspeed in the rest of your day or evening, wherever you're at. And this is David Craig Utz, a resilient leadership guy, signing off. Have a great rest of your day.